It is just after 3 a.m. on the East Coast. Trump has just given his victory speech. I am exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally, but I thought it was important to capture my thoughts for history's sake. Tell you a little bit about what I think this moment means, where we're going, and what we all can do about it. And most importantly, to let you know the end is not here. There's a lot of soul searching and reflecting in the mirror we as Democrats need to do. But this idea that this represents the end of democracy is insanity and irresponsible, and I'm going to get into why. Said the other day that Trump was going to win. Doesn't make it any less surprising now that it's actually happened. Um, as much as I thought he was going to win, I didn't think he would win in the way that he did, by as much as he did. Now, granted, we're still a 50-50 country. We're still as divided today as we were yesterday. None of that has really changed. But I don't really have like a real objective with this video. I really just was sitting watching all the coverage. I just finished watching Trump's victory speech, and I just wanted to record my thoughts for posterity as much as anything. This is a wild moment we're living through. A president this is only the second time we've ever had a president win a non-consecutive election. Somebody who had been president, left the Oval Office, and came back. It's only happened once before. That was Grover Cleveland, like 100 years ago. One of the most telling maps that I saw tonight was the number of counties that Trump did 3% or better than in 2020. It was over 1,000 counties. They showed Kamala Harris, and it was one county. One that she outperformed Joe Biden from 2020. The big theory of this case was that Kamala Harris would either be able to recreate Joe Biden's coalition from 2020, or she would lose some ground among blue collar men, but make up for it with more educated women, suburban women, some of your Nikki Haley Republicans, your Mitt Romney Republicans, as they like to call them. The trouble is, it seems that Donald Trump did a much better job of getting voters in the cities, getting voters among younger voters, getting voters among non-white voters, and of course the commanding lead he already had among white voters, both men and women. But he built on that, not in a huge way, but he did. He got a few percent here or there, and he made sure that every one of his supporters in rural parts of America across the country all turned out. And he showed that this whole idea of you need to appeal to the median voter, this idea that we're taught in, poli-sci 101, that politics is a straight line and your job is to go for the person right in the middle. That's the right way to do politics. This whole movement just kind of put a middle finger to that. And they listened to their most dedicated partisan voters, and they followed them, and they said, that's the agenda we're going to deliver on. And they ran up the score in the parts of the country that voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and 2020. And he peeled off just enough of those urban voters, of those suburban voters, just enough. And to his credit, he was campaigning. He was going to barbershops in the Bronx, going to a bodega, doing rallies in Philadelphia, in Charlotte, in Detroit. He may have called Detroit garbage while he was there, but he went there. How many campaign events did Kamala Harris do at a Bass Pro Shop or at a Dick's Sporting Goods? Like at a Walmart? Like how much did Kamala go after the Bubba vote at all? White dudes for Harris? Really? Like just another version of their celebrity endorsement game that If you haven't caught on by now, celebrity endorsements outside of a very, very few don't work. I've said in the past, Oprah mattered in 2008. I think Elon Musk mattered in this election. Sabrina Carpenter signing up like 30,000 voters in Pennsylvania or whatever it was. It's something I saw on Reddit like today. That stuff doesn't matter. Shit, ground game doesn't matter. Hillary Clinton had the better ground game in 2016. Donald Trump had the better ground game in 2020. Donald Trump was basically his ground game in 2024. Donald Trump was the guy. He did, hundreds of rallies. That was basically their whole ground game. That was it. Ultimately, whether you believe what he said or not, Donald Trump voters, by and large, could make a very clear case for why they were supporting Donald Trump without mentioning Kamala Harris, for the most part. They would talk about no tax on tips. They talk about no tax on overtime. They talk about not wanting to have wars. They talk about, cutting taxes, extending the tax cuts, whatever you want. Kamala struggled to find a message that didn't involve talking about Donald Trump. The last couple of days, when she was on a positive note, talking about what she was bringing to the table, I thought that was some of her strongest points. Unfortunately, it came, day late and a dollar short, as they say. There's going to be a million fingers pointing in every direction for whose fault this is. The left is going to say it's because Kamala Harris, didn't take a strong enough position on Gaza. They're going to say that Biden didn't drop out fast enough, that it's his fault for not dropping out before the debate in June. They're going to say the country wasn't ready for a black woman. All these things might have hints of truth to them. I don't know. The far easier answer is 70% of the country thought we're on the wrong track. And we put up the incumbent vice president of a very unpopular sitting president and expected her to win. And sometimes the math just don't math. If you're an incumbent party looking at 7 in 10 voters things are going the wrong way, chances are they probably blame you. And she really never made a great case for what made her different than Joe Biden. I can think of multiple quotes where she was thinking, I can't think of anything in particular that distinguishes me from Joe Biden. Things will be essentially the same. But then, saying that she would be completely different than Joe Biden because she brings different experiences. Well, what does that mean? What is actually going to be different? I don't think most diehard Kamala Harris supporters would be able to tell you a specific way that she would be different than Joe Biden. And look, I think Joe Biden's done a lot of good. I think that the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act was a great piece of legislation. I think the Inflation Reduction Act was a great piece of legislation. I think history is going to look very kindly on the Biden administration. Our economy is doing much better than the most of the advanced world coming out of COVID. He restored a sense of decency and normalcy to the Oval Office. There was a year there that I think people are already forgetting where things got pretty boring again. Well, things are definitely not going to be boring now. I don't really know what comes next. I know listening from that victory speech and from what I gathered from all these months following this election and these years that I followed politics, the doomsday scenarios around Donald Trump have always been and will continue to be overblown. I saw MSNBC talking about how this election means the end of the dollar, that the US is suddenly going to side with Russia against Ukraine, that borders in Western Europe are about to be withdrawn or redrawn. It's all garbage. This guy just came up, clearly didn't have enough to say. He starts like calling people up to the mic. This is a guy who's just happy to be there. They're going to extend the tax cuts. I can tell you that right now. They've won the Senate. They may still win the House. It's still early to tell that. But chances are, even if they don't win the House, there will be some kind of deal to extend much of the Trump tax cuts. I think that's coming almost no matter what. There's not going to be an abortion ban. There's not going to be an abortion ban. I'm going on record saying it. At least not through legislation. And I know somebody's going to say, oh, that's a big loophole you just did. We could certainly see something like the Supreme Court doing an anti-Roe v. Wade. I don't see it happening. I take Trump at his word, as crazy as that may sound coming from a Democrat. What does this Democrat know? I'm wearing a canceled YouTuber's merch line and I got Pokemon in my fucking bedroom. What do I know? But from working on campaigns, seeing how this stuff works, watching Trump, more importantly, watching how he's operated and how he's campaigned and how Republicans have campaigned, every state where abortion rights was on the ballot today, abortion rights passed. In Nevada, in Arizona, in Missouri, all of which are voting Republican. Abortion rights passed. Florida, it's not going to pass because it needs 60%, but got 57%. Being part of the forced birth movement is a loser electorally. And he knows that. He loves taking credit for the Dobbs decision because of his Supreme Court justices. But he's never been running on a national abortion ban, and he's not going to start now. John Thune, the guy who's going to be the next majority leader, almost certainly, since Mitch McConnell's not going to be it in the Senate, Republican from South Dakota. John Thune is not going to let an abortion ban bill get to the floor of the U.S. Senate. It's not going to happen. Okay. We're going to see a tax cut. Maybe we'll see, the latest iteration of repeal and replace Obamacare. They've never figured out the replace part, so they're never going to do the repeal part. And you even hear them talking about it now. They know how entrenched the ACA is into the healthcare infrastructure of our country. And even though Obamacare continues to be unpopular, the ACA, as it actually exists, is very popular. Nobody wants to take away insurance from people under 26. Nobody wants to go back to pre-existing conditions not being covered by insurance. Not even Republicans want to do that. They don't, okay? That's a big reason why I wanted to make this video tonight. Is a big reason why I want to start this channel. Because I suspected that this was possible. And there's going to be a lot of hair on fire. The republic is over. This election was about the fate of democracy and we failed. No, we didn't. Okay. Democracy is a lot more than the House, the Senate, and the White House. It's all of us. Us, the people, the press, academia, nonprofits, community groups, church groups, people on fucking Twitter and Reddit, people on Facebook. God forbid, people on 4chan. It's all of those people making decisions every day about what's acceptable, what's not, what's a priority, what isn't, and pushing for those things. An abortion ban that is popular with, at best, a quarter of the Republican Party. It's not going anywhere. Tax cuts is coming, sure. There's going to be some real questions about what happens in Ukraine. Like what is the nature of our support? Are we going to force them to accept conditions that compromise their territorial integrity? These are real questions. These are real issues. I'm concerned about that. I don't think we're about to join the Russians on the front line in subjugating Ukraine. That's not about to happen. There are a lot more people in the US government and in the Republican Party than just Donald Trump. Trump sent people to Romania and Poland when he was president. Like, say what you will about the guy. I don't think that he wants to start a nuclear war. I don't. Call me naive. I think we got to do a lot of soul searching as people on the other side of this one. The people that aren't celebrating tonight. I live in LA. And the analogy that I give to people is if a studio puts out a terrible movie, do you blame the audience or do you go back and make a better movie? The Democrats in 2016, 2024, we put out a bad product and the audience has rejected us. At the same time, they voted for abortion rights in all those states I mentioned. Missouri voted for a minimum wage increase. The American people are with us on the issues. You know, Trump called them the party of common sense tonight. That used to be us. That still is us. Abortion won in every state it's been on the ballot. We're the party that believes in common sense gun regulations. We believe that climate change is real and it's happening. We believe that people should be able to get married regardless of who they love or who they are. We believe that regardless of where you grew up, you should be able to have a good job, get a good education. Your kids should be able to get a good education. You should be able to take off work if you're sick. If you break your leg, you shouldn't go bankrupt. Or God forbid, you or a loved one get cancer. We believe you should be able to grow old with dignity. That programs like Social Security and Medicare, we call those entitlements because when you've worked for decades, you are entitled to a comfortable and safe retirement. That's what we believe. But somehow in all of this, we became the party of it's okay to steal up to $1,000 of stuff. It's okay to, if you're a homeless person and you want to live on Venice Beach, well, by God, that's your right. If you want to identify as whoever you want, but you don't get to then swim against the girls' team in varsity, okay? Like common sense stuff where it's not even like 50, 55%, 60%. This is like 80% plus of the country. You could tick down that list. They'd agree with every one of them. The best person for the job every time, regardless of what they look like, where they come from. And that means lifting up people that don't always get in the room, making sure they get in there too. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants that. Nobody wants to feel excluded. Nobody wants to feel excluded. That's an easy thing for anybody to get behind. So why do people feel like we're excluding working class white people? Why do we give off that impression? Why do we give off the impression that, we believe in the beautiful diversity of faiths and practices across the world, except for Christianity? I'm a Jewish guy. I got no stake in that. But again, the hypocrisy there. We believe in diversity and how no matter where you came from or what you believe, you should have a fair shot. Unless you're Christian, then you've got backward dogmatic beliefs. What? So we're against loving our neighbors? What part of Christianity do we not like exactly? Turning the other cheek? That doesn't sound like us. Judging not lest we be judged? I guess we do love to judge. We love a good judge, Democrats do. But my gosh, we have lost the plot. I'm not sure how we get it back again. I wish I had an easy solution to that. Man, there's just a million ways to point to what went wrong. One thing I know for sure, I heard somebody say tonight, I think it was Joy Reid on MSNBC, said that this was a flawless campaign. Well, I would argue that a flawless campaign ultimately wins the campaign. So it was not flawless. What those flaws were are going to take some time to suss out. It's going to take some time marinating on it to really pinpoint what those were. But in broad strokes, not going to where people are, not going to the middle of the country, not going to rural America, exurb America, not really going to these towns that got emptied out when the coal mines went away, when the factories went away, going to where the fentanyl crisis is at its worst, going to places like Dayton, Ohio, going to places like Kensington, going to Philadelphia. I know she went there. I know she went to Philly. But, there's more to Western Pennsylvania than Pittsburgh, right? There's more to these places than the big cities where her rallies took place. And Trump already won those people. He just got them to turn out more by giving them more of what they wanted. There's two ways Kamala could have gone, and ultimately she didn't do either. She could have done more reaching out to the other side, more going into Bubba territory, more trying to win back blue collar voters, white or otherwise. She could have also done the opposite of what Trump did. Trump gave everything that the base wanted, is what he ran on. Kamala backed away from everything she ran on in 2019. How are we then surprised that enthusiasm for the Democratic nominee was lower when that candidate backed away from everything that Democratic primary voters supposedly considered important? I think there's a lot of different ways to set up a good running healthcare system, but nobody would pick the one that we have now. Medicare for all, whether you think it's a good model or not, it's one that Kamala said she wanted to support, and then she backed off from it. She said she was for the defund the police movement. One of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Another thing on the common sense agenda. Defund the police? Like, what? We need more training. We need better funding. We need to recruit better people to be police officers. That's the type of reform we need, not getting rid of law enforcement. Duh. There's no way to say that this campaign was flawless. I've been racking my brain. Like, I cannot believe that she said this campaign was flawless. Again, you don't lose a campaign that was flawless. So what were the flaws? Yeah, campaigning with Liz Cheney, thinking that Liz Cheney was the key to any electoral strategy. People of both parties remember the damage that that family has done to this country, getting us into a war that cost $1 trillion. Who exactly is Liz Cheney supposed to appeal to when she couldn't even keep her own seat in Ruby Red, Wyoming? And let me just say, one thing that made me sick to my stomach was watching the campaign co-chair, Cedric Richmond, guy I've never heard of before in my life. All these kids are out there at Howard University. They've been waiting outside for this historic candidate to come out and tell them about what a great job they've done and what a historic night this is. And instead of coming out and facing these kids, explaining to them that, yes, this is disappointing, but it's going to be okay. We're one country. We move forward together. Anything like that. Or even if you're not going to concede, even just coming out and saying, we're not going to know more tonight. Go home, get some rest. I'll see you again tomorrow. Anything like that. I mean, I cannot imagine Obama in 2008 with that crowd that was in the park in Chicago, just having, Jim Messina or David Plouffe or one of those guys come out and say, sorry, Obama's not coming out tonight. There's not a chance. And everybody's going to draw parallels between what happened at Howard University tonight and what happened 8 years ago at the Javits Center when John Podesta came out instead of Hillary Clinton. And it's the same exact energy. And it's one of cowardice. It's one of it's an abdication of responsibility as a leader. Like, you chose to do this. You had millions of people believe in you. dedicate months of their lives, years in some cases, to get you elected. These kids are staying out there. They got fires burning to keep warm. And you don't even have the guts to send out Tim Walz. That more than anything I saw tonight, that made me angry. That made me really frustrated and upset because they know what that looked like in 2016. And whoever on her staff advised her that this was okay was probably in that Javits Center arena, standing there stupefied that John Podesta was the one coming out to them at 3:00 in the morning. These kids were there all night for what was supposed to be a historic moment that they were witnessing. And you don't have the guts to face them. I mean, it's an indictment of your character. It is. And if it's not that, it's certainly an indictment of the advice that you were getting, that this was somehow an okay thing to do, because it's not. And I hope that by the time I put this out, that Kamala Harris has spoken and she's delivered moving remarks, and I look like a complete asshole for saying this. But right now, I'm pissed that this is how she ended what is a historic candidacy, regardless of the outcome. I mean, as she has done her entire career, Kamala Harris broke a number of barriers with this campaign. And that glass ceiling has more cracks in it than it ever did before. Does this suck that now we've run women twice in the last 3 elections and they both lost? Absolutely. Does it mean that we stop trying? Absolutely not. But it's not a good look. I don't care what your gender. I don't care how long you've been in politics. I don't care how much it hurts. Come out and face the music. Again, people that are, on my side of the aisle are going to feel like I'm giving too much credit here. I'm being too apologetic. I'm just trying to look in the mirror, man. Like hey, we're the problem. It's us. We are putting something down the American people are just not picking up. And the fact that whether it's, people say you are what you eat, as a political party, you are your voters, okay? The Republican Party is now the party of the working class. The Republican Party is now the party of the working class. I became a Democrat to support the working class. I became a Democrat because I care about people getting a living wage. I became a Democrat because I care about people getting a good education, being able to get a good job, being able to get a good home, have health care, not be able to worry that if you break a leg, you're going to go broke, or that if you need to take a couple days off work, you're going to lose your house. Being able to take a vacation a couple times a year, being able to put your kids through college. These are all the same things we all want. And people think that the Republican Party is more likely to want that for their family than us. That's a problem. And that's on us to solve it. That's not on the voters to figure out that we're right. Thank you for sticking with me this far. I hope you'll stick with me as we get to Inauguration Day in the next 4 years. There's going to be a lot to cover. There's going to be a lot of craziness. There's going to be some accomplishments. There's going to definitely be some laughs along the way. Thank you for taking in history with me, even if it's just me in 10 years. Have a good one, everybody.